Greetings, heathens and heretics, and welcome to another In the Abyss album review. Oh,
Hooray! Hooray! New music.
yeah, but I haven't done one for a while, have we? So
No, no, that's
it's.
true. That's true.
How are you, sir? You good?
I am. Yeah, I am. I was out for beers last night with the cultural advisor, Mr. Gavin Evans. So we're both nursing a sore head. And as I said that out loud, I realized I often open the episode talking about a hangover. So, um, perhaps an intervention might be appropriate, but look,
Oh,
that's the truth. That's the truth of it. So,
yeah.
yeah, I won't let it sway my opinions on the record that we're about to talk about.
Well, I don't think this is an album you'd want to listen to with a stinking hangover. That's for sure.
Well, I've just done it. I just did it on the big speakers as well. So, arguably, I'm feeling better for it.
Yeah. All right. Well, so the album's Lorna Shore. Feel the Everblack festering within me, and yeah, I have got that written down because I keep forgetting it.
That's a monstrous album title.
It's a ridiculous album title, but look,
Yeah,
not going to hold it against them
yeah.
because,
You're not going to ask for it in WH Smiths, are you?
well, no.
Excuse me. No.
Have you got? Oh fuck, what was it called? No,
Yeah,
but anyway,
you'd be walking out of all sorts.
look, daft
Anyway,
album title, and
let's.
yeah, yeah.
Mm,
So look, like cards on the table, right?
yeah.
These Lorna Shore, one of those bands that we've got some strong opinions on things like deathcore and stuff like that on this podcast, but. It's obviously quite a high profile band, high profile release, and they are a band that are getting bigger and bigger. So well, it was worth talking about and to try and like we did with the Sleep Token review a
Mm,
while
mm.
back, criticism or not, was trying to understand what it's all about, right? And so from my point of view, like I said, never really been a fan. Do you remember we watched them a little bit of them at Bloodstock in
Yeah,
2023, was it?
it was yeah about 3 4 years ago, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. And we were kind of like, okay, great musicians, but
Yeah.
you
Well,
know,
that was an interesting one for me actually, because I mean, deathcore in general, not a genre that I have much of a relationship with at all. None of it has really clicked. Um, but much like the kind of the I don't get anyone that was sort of outside of that scene, I suppose it was Lorna Shore. A bit of a cliche to say it, but To the Hellfire, when that song came out, and it was a bit of a viral sensation.
yeah,
But I have to say, it was a moment where I did sit up and think, oh, okay, there's actually something worth listening to there. So it piqued my interest, and I think that was the year. It was around that time that they did that set at Bloodstock. So I was like, okay, I wanna check in with
yeah,
this. Um, Ultimately, that set fell flat for me, and maybe I didn't spend enough time standing there watching them because it was a bit of a, oh, I'm going to check them out, and like I wasn't immediately feeling much from it.
a bit
So
grumpy old man approach.
yeah, yeah, and I think that's just been me with deathcore, all the cores,
What,
and
Andrea as well?
and the cause. Funnily enough, but metalcore, deathcore, I've always been a bit of a grumpy old man about it, right? Um, and that's a conversation in itself. But just to make the point that my ears did prick up around the Pain Remains album. So I was curious to see what Lorna Shore would come up with next, and here we are.
Yeah, yeah. So for all intents and purposes, it's an ambitious piece of work. Let's start it there for one. It's a double album.
Yeah,
For those of you who partake in physical releases. Every song is
spot.
pretty long as well, isn't it? You're all
Yeah,
sort of in the 6 to 9 minute kind of
absolutely. Yeah.
territory. When you think how relentless some of the music is, that's quite a feat. So I think I put it on in the car, sort of tentatively a little bit, really, and I was like, "All right, we'll give this a go, see
Mm.
what I think." And so the first track, sort of "Prison of Flesh," starts off quite moody, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh,
It's
you've
all,
got the obligatory atmospheric
yeah,
intro,
all the
just
synths and strings
yeah.
and all that kind of stuff. And then in sort of typical deathcore style, there's no kind of there's no grey area, is there? It's like wallop,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
you
and
just
that's
get
it.
hit by this fucking train, and it stays like that for the rest of the track, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I mean,
it does sort of dip and dive a little bit. But I was like, you know what? There's something in this.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
like just quite quickly, I was like, yeah, there is something there.
I think that first track, my first impressions of it is it just grabs you by the throat. You
Yep,
know, I mean,
proper.
atmospheric intro aside, um, so I think the first feeling is just kind of almost like wowed by the intensity of it because it is just bosh, it's
Yeah,
straight in there and it's chaotic and it's the sort of track where probably, if I'm honest, historically I would have gone, no, not for me, and moved on because it's so um well, it's just so intense. There's so
yeah,
much going on. There's speed. It's going off here. It's going off there. Um, but stuck with it because I wanted to. Like, we're listening to the album, so let's give it its due. Um, but it's not long before you're kind of under its spell a bit, and it's just like fucking hell. This is so intense. And then reading like kind of reading a little bit about the songs and you find out that this track's about dementia. Okay, so you start to understand the intensity of it, the schizophrenic nature of it, the confusion in it, the fact that none of it, you don't know where it's going, you don't quite know which way is up and which way you're headed. For me, when I stack that idea next to the track, I think, well, that is like the perfect representation of kind of the confusion and the frustration of
yeah,
what you can imagine it would feel like, whether you're affected directly or family members with dementia.
yeah.
So I thought that was a really poignant kind of point of interest with that track. But fuck me,
It leaves you a bit
it's
breathless.
yeah, and I'd say they come out of the gates with what is probably just in terms of ferocity, like the most ferocious track on the album. I think it's just bosh,
Yeah, yeah, because a lot of the rest of the record, and I think what makes it work for me is the fact that you've got all that savagery, but they really mix it up all the way through the album with lots of synths, lots of strings, lots of more
Yeah.
intricate parts. And um, Glenwood halfway through the album, I mean, at times it's pure power metal.
Yes. Now
You know,
there's a moment in that track we get a Boyzone moment, right? Because there's a
Boys Own Deathcore.
There is no, I mean, look, that's no shade. Because if you haven't picked up on the enthusiasm yet, I mean, I think we both thought it's a really strong record, and it's definitely turned my head, turned my focus to a band that I hadn't been giving them their due. Um, but yeah, on Glenwood, there's a key change. So about two-thirds of the way through the song, there's this moment where when Boyzone would always stand up in their white gowns and you'd have the key change. We get that. I mean, it's presented in a very, very different way. But
Just a little bit.
yeah, I mean, that just goes back to your point about it. There is a kind of I mean, I wouldn't go so far as say cheesy element to it, but this kind of classic rock song ideas being
I think
used in this.
I think you can. I think you can go as far as saying there's a bit of a cheesy element to it, but that's from my point of view, that's a good thing
Yeah,
because that helps the whole flow of the record. If this was 50 minutes of just fucking relentless deathcore, I'd have
yeah.
turned it off really quickly.
Right. That's a really
You know?
interesting point because like the curiosity in me took me back to their first album,
Yeah,
which I can't I understand is like it's a different band essentially.
yeah,
They've had so many lineup changes along the way that I think the original version of the band doesn't exist anymore. They're one of those ones where there are no original members, which I think is fascinating. So clearly it's been a journey, and to that point, yeah, that first album is much more Route One in the sense of just how it portrays the weight and the heaviness in the music compared to this. I mean, there's so much going on. And I think at this point you have to give credit to Andrew O'Connor, so one of the guitar players who's responsible for all the symphonic stuff, all the extras. And it's like to my ears, it has a lot in common with like film soundtracks. There's this epic nature to it. You can kind of hear these Hans Zimmer moments in there. Um, and what I think they've done, interestingly, and bravely, is that's all really high in the mix. For essentially a
yeah,
black and death metal band to not have the guitars like cranked, and instead there's this layer of choirs and synths and organs and all sorts of other stuff that's sort of pushing everything up. There's this real sense of ascendancy on the record.
Yeah, yeah, completely. At no point do I feel like I'm getting bogged down listening to it. You know, my son listens to a bit of deathcore, and I just it's just like fucking being hit in the face. But there's just
Yeah.
there's no sort of substance to it. Whereas this has got so many different layers, and I think I don't know, you could call it light and dark if you want. You know,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
there's a lot of that going on, and you know, like I said, Glenwood, you know, the last sort of minute or so is just like Scandinavian power metal, and
Right. Yeah.
it's almost like palate cleansers throughout the album, and it makes the like what Joe Quayle was saying, you know, the light makes the heavier sound heavier. So when those heavy parts kick in, they're just fucking
Absolutely. And
soul
there's
crushing.
two tracks in particular. I think In Darkness is one for me that has these really big sort of dynamic shifts where they just take things down very quietly, but then when they kick off, it really kicks off.
Yeah,
And then probably at this stage in the game, my favorite track on the album is the closer, Forevermore. Um,
just my notes here say over 9 minutes of hugely overblown drama. Brilliant.
exactly, but that drama comes from those shifts. So,
Yeah,
there's so much going on. You've got this this kind of choral vocal coming in, this female vocal that drifts through as well. But it's like, I mean, you could take any one of these songs and imagine them in a set live. Any one of them it's got like showstopper written all over them.
yeah, it has. And Death Can Take Me reminds me of like bands like Flesh God Apocalypse and Septic
Right.
Flesh, that kind of like that symphonic death metal. A Nameless Hymn reminds
Yeah.
me of like puritanical or death cult era Dimmu Borgir.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
that is like almost pure symphonic black metal,
Yeah. And I
you
think
know?
that's something that I hadn't really I didn't realize how close a band like Lorna Shore are to black metal,
Oh, I think, yeah, there's a
in
ton of black metal. There really is.
if there's a Venn diagram there, there's this big chunk in the middle there that's just kind of black and metal.
Yeah.
And that for me was one of the anchors, into this album. It was like, okay, right, I get that and I understand that, and that kind of opened the door for me to kind of just enjoy the rest of the album. Um, with and I probably can't review a Lorna Shore album without mentioning the breakdowns, and because I think anyone, that's what they're going to be expecting, and that's probably something we don't hear in black metal, but then and that's when you're listening to something like deathcore, because
Yeah.
I mean certainly Prison of Flesh, we get our first real, when everything just crashes down and you have those, it's almost like a To the Hellfire moment where it's
Yeah.
just like this snarling, screeching, pneumatic drill drumming, but with so much space and weight in there that, it's don't know what to do with yourself.
The fucking sub drops as well. Going back to Death Can Take Me, right
Mm.
towards the end, I think it's only about 30 seconds from the end. There is the most almighty fucking sub drop.
Yeah.
You know, I was listening to it through the big speakers at home, and it was just like, boom. It's like, for fuck's sake. But again, it's those things like that, the sub drops and that, it's timed right. You know, it's not
Yeah.
just for the sake of it, which you get with a lot of deathcore. It all
Right.
comes at the right moment where you want a big breakdown.
Yeah.
You want to be hit hard, bang, they get it absolutely bang on. And that, while, the way we talk about seeing bands live and listen to albums and that way, you want a bit of danger and whatnot. You
Mm,
don't have
mm.
any of that here. It's all very clinical. You know, I don't think you could have music like this and it be loose. It's got to be very
Yeah, I
pinned
agree.
up, and
Yeah, I would
while
agree.
that could be seen as a bit of a criticism, at the same time, it's integral to the way
I,
they play.
I think it's when it's done well and it works, it works. There's,
Yeah,
there's no denying that. And for me, I think, it is one of the things that's put me off deathcore as a genre. And maybe I've just been tarring too many bands with the same brush over this, but I think it's a genre that's relied very much on kind of technology and to a degree gimmickry to appeal, and those big sub drops, and that is I my assumption has always been, or my feeling has always been, it's been a bit of a gimmick that's attached to the genre.
it's a token thing dropped
A
in, isn't it?
token thing,
Yeah,
right? but when it's done well, and I think here it is done really, really fucking well. And I know I've mentioned it probably 3 times now, but To the Hellfire, I think that's why that captured, I know that's a different album, but that's what captured people
Mm.
about this band is all of a sudden this drop comes in and it's just like, fuck me.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what it's supposed to sound like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they
And
and they
there's a lot of fuck me moments throughout the album.
yeah, but for an album
And
that's
we love it.
exactly, but for an album that's so intense and angry sounding, angry is not the right word, but there's a lot going on here. It's done tastefully.
Yeah.
It's not every track, but it's enough that you feel it when it happens.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You definitely feel it.
yeah,
Um, I think we need to talk about the vocals because
absolutely.
they are fucking insane
Yeah.
at times. And like, I've gone back and listened to the rest of the back catalogue. I started with Pain Remains. Obviously, that's the closest thing to this. I know there was the EP in the middle, but to help me try and understand what it is I like about this album, and like it was okay, but this has got just more of a. It's got a better flow. It's got a better groove and whatnot. But one thing that definitely has clicked is vocals.
Yeah.
What's his name? Fuck me, I can't
Will
remember.
Ramos.
Yeah, Will
Yeah.
Ramos. Um, at times it's like there's four vocalists on this
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
there's just the yes, it's all growls and screams and pig squeals and fucking all of that, but it just goes from up here to over there and
Yeah.
then back over here again, and it's
It's
fucking mental.
it's a perform. Yeah, I mean, it's trite to say it, but it's more than a performance. It's like
It's an
it's
instrument in
almost
itself.
it's an instrument itself. It's almost like artistic what he's doing with his voice there. I'm not sure if that comes across in the right way, but I just mean he's not just singing. I tell you, I thought about a lot while I was listening to this album. Like as creaky old men of a certain age, back in
Oh,
the
what?
day. Yeah, I'm afraid so. I hate to
Yeah.
be the bearer of bad news, but it's true. I've got my certificates in the post. Um, Back in the day, as old men, I want to say,
Good
um,
thought.
our equivalent was Mike Patton, right? We had Mike Patton, okay, and he was the guy that we all looked up to because he would contort his voice into all these different places and spaces, and like at the time, he was the only guy doing it.
Yeah.
And I was listening to this album thinking, okay, to me, this is this generation's Mike Patton. Okay, this is someone who can do with his voice. I mean, they don't. I wouldn't say they sound alike. So I
No,
don't
no,
think
no.
they sound the same. But in terms of where he's going and what he's doing with his voice and how he's using that and the extremes that he's pushing his voice to, I'm just reminded of what Mike Patton did back in the 90s. Not his voice necessarily, but just kind of his approach to, it's not even singing, is it? Like vocalizing.
You probably got to think about the impact he had as well, because like I said, there was nobody doing what he did before him.
Right. Not what
So,
I know of,
it was like, fuck me, what is this? And yeah, you're right. We're not comparing the two, but it is a similar approach to vocals. And look, full respect to him. I mean, what he does on this album, and I know it's going to be layered and all that kind of stuff, but if you watch them live, I'll come back to that in a minute.
Mm,
He carries that in the flesh as well. So he's clearly got some serious fucking ability.
yeah,
Some ridiculous. Just some of the noises that come out of him are just like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
I know. I mean,
You've
it's
been possessed.
like, where do you find out you can do that? You just
Maybe he
must have
fell down the stairs and was
really.
like, ah!
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, yeah. Each step was a different. Oh,
But yeah, going back to the live point,
yeah.
I've gone on, just watching some bits on YouTube and that from the summer festivals and that this year. I think it was Summer
Mm,
Breeze I was watching. One thing does bother me though, and that's just how heavy and important the synths and the strings are.
yeah,
It's all on a backing track live,
yeah,
right? There's no
yeah.
keyboard player, there's none of that, and I think that lets them down, and it completely puts me off going to see them live. And I know that's a little bit wanky when they've got backing tapes. It's very common now, but
Mm,
because all of that is so prominent in the mix and it's so important to the music,
yeah,
for me it needs to at least have keyboards.
yeah. I think it's some. Yeah, I know. I agree. Represented somewhere in the stage because
Yeah.
just as you said, it's so integral to the sound, to what Lorna Shore have become, I suppose.
Hmm.
I don't know them enough to know if it's all this sort of symphonic element has always been the case, but this new album, it's such an integral part. It's the
Yeah,
integral part. I think it's what elevates it to what we're describing as a really great album, something that's really worth listening to, and this is what makes it stand out from a lot of other
yeah,
other records. So yeah, I'd like to see, and I think that's what let us down at Bloodstock. I think that was one of the things. This huge sounding band actually live with a backing track, the grandiosity doesn't really come
no,
across.
no, it doesn't. And if
Um,
you watch, I don't know, like over the summer, I've watched, symphonic bands like Emperor, Dimmu Borgir,
yeah,
Emperor especially. They make the keyboard player a real big part of the performance. There's
yeah,
lots of
yeah,
keys in Emperor's music, and it'd be the same. So we going by how dramatic Lorna Shore are,
yeah,
add keyboards into that on
yeah,
stage, and I think it would really work. You could make a real sort of focal point of it.
yeah, definitely.
And I think I don't know. Look, maybe it's something they'll do in the future. I don't know, but
Yeah, I mean, it would be lovely to see, particularly big Alexandra Palace show coming up in the UK,
yeah,
and a venue that size. I mean, what's it, 10,000 cap? I
yeah,
think
about
like
that. Yeah,
to see a stage, to see something on the stage which really matched up to what they're presenting in the music. Um, let's watch this space, I guess.
yeah, yeah.
I think they're a band that are gonna I think they're on the cusp of really breaking through in quite
Yeah, I
a
think so.
serious way. I think they're gonna be they're not a new band anymore, are they really? I
Look,
guess
Ali
just
Pally, like you say, ten
yeah,
thousand cap. That's
you
that's
know,
you're talking arena level. So
yeah. And I think once this record comes out, I think they're going to sell a lot of tickets for that, and I think they're going to do really well off the back of it. So it'll just be interesting to see if they grow as a performing entity.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I know they've talked a lot recently about being inspired by bands like Parkway Drive. They've been out away on tour with Parkway Drive and have talked about what an inspirational band that is to them in terms of the scale of their live performance. So
Look,
I'm
Partway
sure.
Drive had full cellos, full string
Right.
sections.
Yeah.
And again, that's really important to the music. They've done that right. So if they do, it'll be great, and I will definitely want to see that live. But
Yeah.
until that happens, I will give it a miss because I know what I'm like. I will just
Right.
stand there and be a bit grumpy about it, and it'll take my enjoyment away. So it's just better off not
Yeah.
bothering.
I've had that experience with, and I'm going slightly off tack here, but the first time I saw Rivers of Nile live,
Yeah,
and one of the things that stood out about that album was all the saxophone parts and the brass parts, yeah, and all that. Now they've put it right, and they've got a guy out on tour with them now. But the first time I saw him, it was that moment of like, what's going on here? Where's what? You know, and it was, yeah, it just felt like, come on, if that's what you're selling your music with,
yeah. If
make
that's
it
a
an important
USP,
part.
make the most of it.
Yeah, yeah. But
And
anyway, we digress.
yeah, we do. And look, I don't want to take anything away from the album because you know I've listened to it a lot since we've had it, an awful lot in the car, at
Yeah,
home, through headphones, various different ways. And at the minute, it sits in the top five albums of the year for me.
right.
I think it's a
Right.
fucking magnificent piece of work. I genuinely do.
Yeah, yeah,
Which, having not been a fan of the band's previous work, and I'm still not, from what I've gone back and listened to, this is a piece of work that needs to be heard.
right.
They're doing something that I don't think there's anybody else out there doing it with the level of intensity, with that level of creativity.
Yeah,
It's
I
it's,
mean,
it's incredible.
maybe people can set us straight on that, and
Yeah, yeah,
drop some suggestions in the in the comments and that, because I feel like the door's been open to me. It's like I can go back to the genre as a whole with open ears now,
perhaps, yeah,
because you know
yeah.
um standout track.
You know what? That's really difficult. Looking at my notes, I go with you on Forevermore closing the album because it
Yeah,
is just so ridiculous.
yeah, yeah.
Um, I mean,
I'd give a shout out to a couple that we haven't mentioned, which is War Machine and Oblivion, the single, which I
yeah,
think that, those two tracks have something in common for me, where I think they're the closest the album gets to like a straight ahead kind of rocker. I mean, they're not that, but less embellished. a bit more straightforward in terms of the arrangement and just kind of
Yeah.
how they translate, I guess. They're kind of like you can just crank those ones up and just have a good time. But anyway, you were mulling over your
Yeah, I
favorite.
mean, look, yeah, to pick a favorite song is really difficult because I don't think there's a weak song on the album,
Yeah.
and that's saying something. Um, yeah, it's just I'm blown away by it. Look, we had Cradle of Filth earlier in the year that blew me away and still does now. A band again, another band that I've never been keen on,
Yeah.
and now this, and the two albums aren't that dissimilar either in terms, all the synths and
Yeah, that's true.
all that
Some
stuff.
some
So,
epic
I do enjoy this
blackens.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
No, I love synths and strings and all that drama, but it's gotta everything's got to fit right, and they absolutely fucking nail it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, they've done it in a really creative way. It's not just a gimmick to sort of go back to that reference. It really adds to the music and elevates the music. And that's exciting.
yeah, it is. It is. So let's see where they go with it and see, because they're a pretty young band, I think, aren't they? It's not like they're
Well, everyone's a young band
pushing
to
50.
us.
Well, this is true.
That's the thing. I think they're probably sitting in their 30s, or late
Yeah,
20s,
something like that.
30s.
So they
Yeah.
got they got years ahead of them.
Yeah,
Years ahead of them. So let's see how they develop. But yeah, go and check it out. Even if you are grumpy old bastards like us, give it a go because fuck me, I'm because of my previous opinions of them, I've been blown away by it. Completely blown away by it.
I
And
mean, look, you
yes,
can't
I've
argue with
pre-ordered the
that.
vinyl, so which is always the seal of approval.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there
I
you go.
mean that.
Yeah, let us know what you think about it when the album comes out. It's out on the 12th, so in a few days from when you hopefully be watching this. And yeah, let us know what you think. And if you're already a fan as well, where does this stand? Because
Mm,
it is a bit of a
mm.
shift. So I don't know. Are there going to be haters? I don't know.
That's an
Let's hear it.
interesting point because I think we're coming at it as, born again fans, as it were.
Yeah,
With no, where do you pitch this in their career?
yeah, yeah. So yeah, let's hear what you got to say. Anyway, thank you very much for your opinions. That was a very surprising experience. I'm looking forward to getting the vinyl.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for watching and listening. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you again soon. Stay metal.